word change maker is very akin to being an individual with unique superpowers. Don't change the world like other people have changed it. Change the world like you're supposed to change it. I am so excited to be here as one of your latest parade change makers. What a huge honor for me.
With all of our change makers, we really just want to like take things back to the beginning. I just want to talk a little bit about those things, like these moments in our childhood that do kind of impact maybe our worldview in the beginning. You definitely had some of your excited family that maybe wasn't the most excited that you were born as a girl rather than a boy.
I grew up in a culture which is unfortunately common in a lot of cultures around the world, where a son and a boy is considered a huge win and a daughter is considered a little bit of a burden. So I'm the second daughter in my family. From the day I was born until much into adulthood, it was very clear to me that I had a lot to prove as a girl. And I think that's where a lot of my resilience comes from, to constantly be striving. Now, do I think that's a fair and healthy circumstance? Not necessarily. Do I think that's maybe what the driving force behind my success is? Absolutely. So it's a little bittersweet.
Looking back, do you feel like comedy was a way that you were able to cope or able to just use and like view your world in that way?
Yeah, I feel like with every single traumatic thing in my life, comedy has been my crutch. With everything. Comedy has a way of just like kind of holding you like a warm hug in very scary times, and I have used it throughout my life.
It's definitely a huge connector, and I feel like, you know, growing up, when do you think you like always maybe like set out to become an entertainer? Was it always something you saw for yourself?
From as young as I can remember, I loved the idea of entertainment, and I don't think I ever actually believed there was a way for me to be an entertainer. But then when I discovered YouTube in 2010, sup! And I was like, oh, this is like a platform where I could share my point of view, and like there's not really that many gatekeepers, and I see a way to connect the dots to become an entertainer. So yes, I've always loved entertainment. How I got into it was just a little bit of an unclear journey at the beginning. Yeah. Okay, bye.
Your success wound up taking you all the way out to LA, which is just so exciting. Talk to me a little bit about when you then moved to a place like LA, especially culturally, kind of dealing with that too, when you're then surrounded by other creators, but it may not necessarily look like or be like your home.
I moved from Toronto to LA a decade ago, actually, in 2015. But before that, I had come to LA a few times, and I always felt super out of place, because it seemed like everyone else knew each other. They all knew some recipe and culture that I was unaware of and I was not a part of. I was like, oh, like, no one I know speaks the language I grew up speaking, and no one here knows what a samosa is, and no one here knows soca music. So it was a steep learning curve for me.
It's so interesting just hearing your story in that way too, that you have been an advocate for cultural representation.
Yeah, there's a kind of a shallow reason, and then there's like a deeper reason for that. The shallow reason is like, yeah, I think my culture is super cool. On a deeper level, though, why I'm such an advocate for representation is I know from an actual research perspective that when people don't see stories featuring people that look like them, it actually can hinder the evolution of certain communities. You know, so much of what we see on TV and on movies is how we understand ourselves, it's how we grow, it's how conversations happen. And when those people in those TV shows and movies always look one way, that means a conversation also always sounds one way.
Absolutely, and then you get this opportunity, I mean, when you became the first bisexual woman of color to host a late night show.
Welcome to the first episode of A Little Late with Lilly Singh.
I think that sometimes maybe just because you're there doesn't necessarily mean that everything's all, you know, cheery and perfect. I think that there's always a lot of work to do. So just talk to me a little bit too about maybe how your perspective maybe shifted or changed once you did get there, once you did get to probably one of the most coveted spaces in comedy, at least in this country,
Totally.
What that looked like for you.
I learned through that experience that getting a seat at the table doesn't matter if the table sucks. Right? If the table is not going to serve you food, if the table's not going to let you be part of the conversation, if your chair is shorter at the table, if you're not getting the same meal as everyone else and the same service as everyone else, then that table actually isn't meant for you. And that's kind of what I felt like. So I think the greater goal should be to build our own tables, and ones where we are actually invited into the conversation and treated like equals.
With all that experience too, I know that you did wind up launching your own production company and foundation to focus on highlighting stories and voices that matter.
So how my company is broken down is it's Unicorn Island, and like you mentioned, there's a production side that is entertainment, TV, film, storytelling. The fun side is supporting girls and women around the world. Most of our grassroots efforts are in India. It's about changing the culture around how we treat girls and women. Now, the connecting thread between both of these things is my belief, my deep belief, that storytelling is the intervention. Like, storytelling is how you change culture, it is how you change minds, and what we take in and what we watch, what we hear is really important in relation to how we treat people. and how we value people.
That's so beautiful. I know that your first feature doing it debuted at South by last year in 2024. That's it's such an incredible feat.
That movie is a sex comedy in the vein of like 40-Year-Old Virgin or any other movie like that. But I think because it has me as the lead and has a few other characters that are also BIPOC, I think there's this idea where it's considered niche because of that. But it's not, because it's a universal theme. So even with things like that, it's like I feel like I'm constantly up against a lot of obstacles, but it's a worthwhile fight.
I know that you do host a Diwali party every year in LA, and that's so great. To just give people a chance to connect, but also I think we talk a lot about community and communities that we want to build.
I think my culture is very cool. And so I thought, wouldn't it be so great if I threw a Diwali party that was the party? Like, it is the party to go to, whether you're South Asian or not. But it's my favorite thing ever because not only does the South Asian community come and be like, oh my God, this is so great, you feel so seen and we feel community, but it's like you have Terry Cruz, MJ Rodriguez, Paula Abdul coming through being like, this is the best party we've ever been to. And I feel pride in that it's a Diwali party that people think is still cool and fun because my culture is cool. And I will not be made to believe otherwise. I will not be made to believe otherwise.
I feel like as we're driving towards this representation in numerous areas, there can be certain things that can maybe knock us back a bit when we get to these places. How do you maybe just like kind of keep yourself going in moments like that? It can feel super discouraging, I think, especially as a BIPOC person when you're in entertainment in that way.
It is super hard to keep going. But what keeps me going is this idea that it doesn't matter if you're impacting 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, or 1,000,000 people. Those people still matter. Impact can happen with one person too.
What are some things that you think that we can all do just to promote better representation as best that we can?
I think by nature, humans are so good at being really loud about the things they don't like. I think we need to be equally as loud about the things we love.